What's up, world? It's your boy TNT back at it one more again with Try Nitro Reacts, and we're gonna be reacting to crazy cults that are still active today. But trust me, bro. Make sure y'all go to his channel and subscribe. He be dropping some tight videos, man. And we about to get into this thing. Yeah.
Crazy cults that are still active today. The Church of God with signs following. Have you ever been in a standard run-of-the-mill Christian church and just thought to yourself, wow, this is really missing something? This is missing a lot of venomous snakes. Well, if you have, surprisingly, you wouldn't be the first. And you would also be a perfect candidate for the Church of God with signs following, which in itself is just a strange name. But trust me when I say that the name is the least strange thing about this cult. Members of the Church of God with signs following are either holiness or Pentecostal Christians, which at a glance may seem normal. However, it's the specific rite or ritual that the Church of God with signs following focus on that makes their congregation so odd. To put it bluntly, one of the core elements of the Church of God with signs following is serpent handling. Specifically the belief that if you are a true Christian, you should easily be able to handle a venomous snake or serpent of any variety without suffering any negative consequence. And in case handling the snake is not enough, you should also be able to consume venom from these venomous snakes completely issue-free. And spoiler alert, there was issues. But before we get too into the weeds on incidents, let me give you some history. The religious practice of snake handling goes all the way back to the 2nd century, when the Ophites reportedly handled snakes during their services and also worshipped serpents, and the tradition has also been seen in ancient Egypt. But the tradition of handling snakes for religious purposes didn't appear in the United States until 1910. And this practice is generally associated with the ministry of George Went Hesley, a minister from Tennessee. George was originally a minister at the Church of God. However, in 1922, he resigned, citing troubles at home, and decided to take his ministry on the road. Through the late 1920s and even 1930s, George traveled through the southeast United States, resuming his ministry as a traveling preacher, promoting both God and the specific practice of serpent handling. Now, interestingly, basically every place that George visited to share this practice was extremely receptive to it, which is, at least to me, a bit shocking. Although it is reported that George was extremely charismatic, persuasive, and passionate about the craft. During his time on the road, George visited small towns in Tennessee, Kentucky, the Carolinas, Virginia, Ohio, and even Indiana. And it's reported that each small town adopted the serpent test of faith with overwhelming popularity after having a demonstration from George himself. And it's because of this that the...
So you mean to tell me this dude went around the southeast and kind of the Appalachians, however you say that shit, and with him doing a demonstration at these pop-up sermons, people thought that, hey, this is a good idea. We should incorporate this into our church. Boy, y'all are crazy.
The greater Appalachian region kind of adopted the practice. And I mean, I guess you've kind of got to be a charismatic guy to convince random people you don't know that the best way to worship God is, of course, by handling snakes and drinking venom. From the 1930s to the 1940s and 50s and beyond, churches that went on to adopt this serpent handling ritual became known broadly as Churches of God with signs following. And while most of these churches had no real connection besides their Pentecostal roots, the practice of snake handling was able to bring them together and have them categorized as the cult we're discussing right now. Now, if you're asking yourself, where does this belief even come from? And what does it have to do with Christianity at all? Well, the answer is the Bible, actually. People who participate in the serpent handling believe it is so important because of the two following quotes. In Luke 10:19, for example, it says, quote, "Behold, I give unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions, and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you." Interesting, relatively vague, and I think more metaphorical than anything, but there's also another quote that's a bit more direct, and that's Mark 16:17-18. That goes as follows, quote, "And these signs shall follow them that believe. In my name shall they cast out devils, they shall speak with new tongues, they shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover." That is a bit more direct. And if you were, laying around in the 1930s and you had a charismatic man show up into your town with snakes and proof from the Bible that handling snakes could make you more godly, or at least prove your godliness, I could see that argument. However, it's definitely not all sunshine and rainbows. And that's because, unsurprisingly and unfortunately, this practice did lead to deaths. Potentially one of the most ironic and notable deaths caused by this practice was the death of George Went Hesley himself, when in July...
You mean to tell me... God forgive me, because he was trying to practice your word, but some things, like, I ain't gonna even get into that. But anyway, you mean to tell me that the leader and the person who started all this stuff end up succumbing to a snake bite? That is a hell of a way to go out. I wonder what the hell, if you believe, I'm a believer, but everybody don't. If you believe, I wonder what it was like when he passed on to the next life and had to review his life deeds. Like, were they up there like, nigga, this was just a scripture. He didn't tell you to go out there and do that for real.
July of 1955, he died after receiving a snake bite at a service he was conducting in Florida. Although George passed away because of this tradition, the tradition did not pass away with him. And this practice and larger cult that he was essentially the grandfather of continued to go on for decades and still persists in the modern day. Honestly, I feel like that'd be a really cool video for those, boots on the ground YouTubers that just film videos with people. Like, imagine a video, I spent 24 hours with the snake cult. That would be cool to see, and maybe we'll see it someday. But for now, this is all you got. Now, back to the tragedies. It's been reported that at least 35 people have died between 1936 and 1973 due to the serpent handling practice.
Well, that ain't that many.
It's also been stated by multiple sources that today there's likely been at least 105 deaths caused by this serpent handling practice associated with the Church of God with Science following. Realistically, the beliefs of this church are going to be the least crazy we talk about because it's honestly just an odd corner of Christianity that, loves snake handling. However, as we've seen, there has definitely been unfortunate tragedies due to this practice. But with that being said, don't touch venomous snakes, and let's move on. Happy science. Admittedly, happy science sounds rather cute and sounds like it could also be part of a kindergarten curriculum. Although, unsurprisingly, the reality of this cult is not cute whatsoever. Happy Science was founded in 1986 in Japan by a man named Ryu Okawa. Ryu was a successful businessman and stock trader who worked internationally. Although as a student and as a working professional, before he even established Happy Science, he knew that he was meant for something more in this life. And he claims this explicitly, stating in one instance, for example, in 1981, 5 years before the establishment of the Happy Science cult, that while working a job, Ryu experienced Buddha enlightenment and came in contact with a divine spirit. This spirit began communicating with him and told him, quote, good news, good news. Ryu felt so compelled by this message that he grabbed a pen and paper, wrote it down, and then began asking the spirit that was contacting him, who are you? And Ryu alleges that the spirit was a spirit known as Niku Shonin, a senior disciple from the Buddhist religion. Following that experience in 1981, Ryu made it his mission and destiny to found a new religion. And that he did. And only years later, Happy Science was founded, and things got extremely weird.
What kind of symbol
Ryu
is that?
was a massive believer in the spirit world. And in a 2-year span from 1985 to 1987 alone, he published 13 books in an effort to prove the existence of that spirit world. And interestingly, the final 2 books that he published came out in 1991. And these books, titled The Great Warning of Allah and The Terrifying Revelations of Nostradamus, were both #1 bestsellers in Japan, which is concerning for reasons we'll get into. You see, on a surface level, Happy Science claims to be a group that is about peace, love, truth-seeking, self-reliance, and ultimate prosperity and happiness.
Watch
And
it
their
be a
goal
death
is
cult.
to spread happiness and peace by spreading the word and truth of their religion. But would you be surprised if I told you that the true intentions of Happy Science are much darker, and the beliefs surrounding Happy Science are, well, downright delusional? The core belief of Happy Science is that an ancient deity named El Cantare, who is claimed to be the highest god on Earth and the lord of all gods, was originally the ruler of Venus, but came to Earth to establish the human race. And over the course of all of human history, El Cantare has been watching over humanity and has even been reincarnated multiple times to ensure humanity's prosperity. And the most recent incarnation of the highest god of all gods and this ancient spirit from Venus
the
is,
dude who
of course,
created it.
well, Ryu Okawa himself.
I knew
which is
it.
why, of course, he's leading Happy Science, because he is the true enlightened one. And he is so enlightened, in fact, that he claims that he speaks to nearly every single god on a daily basis. Not only can he communicate with gods, but he can also communicate with the spirits of dead historical figures. And there's actually a
Why the hell
hilarious
they got
interview
Obama in
of
there?
Okawa doing an interview where he is allegedly possessed by the spirit of Margaret Thatcher and speaking from her spirit. Like, just watch this. This is hilarious.
I can't.
Oh.
I'm still alive.
Your ex-Prime
I'm
Minister
Prime Minister.
Margaret Thatcher?
I've been Prime Minister.
Besides that core belief of the, well, ancient deity from Venus creating all humanity and now being Okawa himself, they also believed in the existence of reincarnation, angels, demons, heaven, hell, and of course, aliens. And while this cult has extremely kooky roots, from its establishment in 1986 to its #1 bestseller books in 1991, the cult was able to grow to over 5.6 million members worldwide. In 1991 is where things really took off, because the Japanese government officially recognized happy science as a religion, giving it a lot more validity. And due to this national recognition, Happy Science took its marketing to the next level, not only releasing ad campaigns, but also creating its own anime to spread its message. But on top of creating animes and running marketing campaigns, Okawa did not stop rating books. And it's believed that today there have been thousands of books written by Okawa, most of which being just transcriptions from his long, drawn-out, well, speeches. And with the combination of all this media being pumped out and the unlikely success of some of this media, Happy Science was gaining a lot of cash flow, allowing them to, of course, further expand their message. And this expansion eventually led to the establishment of their own political party in Japan. That's right, Happy Science was not happy enough being a cult, they also had to create their own political party, known as the Happiness Realization Party. Now, while Happy Science was kind of able to hide under the guise of being a spiritual awakening and a general positivity and happiness and love-sharing group, the political party is really where the cracks started to show. From its establishment on May 23rd, 2009, the HRP, or Happiness Realization Party, expressed some of the following beliefs or policies. The party believed that a nuclear deterrent was absolutely necessary for Japan. They believed that the Nanking Massacre never happened and that Japan never committed any atrocities against China or Korea. The party believed that Japan invading China and Korea could be possible good ideas, and at the very least, they should extremely militarize Japan. And they also had a laser focus on doubling the population of Japan, bringing it to 300 million in the course of only a few decades. These are really only a few tame examples of what the Happiness Realization Party wanted to accomplish with political power. And it really does serve as a stark contrast between the messages of the cult versus the messages of the political party. Because, as I stated, the cult or religion claimed to be all about inclusivity and love and happiness and literally saving the world through enlightening people to happiness and love and realizing your inner peace. Or, something like that. That's essentially what they claimed. If you ignore all of the, ancient deity from Venus starting humanity stuff. Regardless, unsurprisingly, this political party was not nearly as popular as Ryu would have wanted. They gained no seats in parliament, and I think largely they were rather obscure and seen as more of a laughingstock. Now, interestingly, both the cult and political party exist to this very day, although in recent years they have been, well, heavily discredited by inside members, specifically the son of Ryu Okawa and the wife of Ryu Okawa, who have both disowned the cult, saying there's not nearly as many members as there are claimed, and basically disowning their father and husband, saying he was crazy, and this entire cult is, well, a crazy cult. But believe it or not, even with all this lunacy, they still had a literal university that they established in Japan that still exists to this very day. And I guess, speaking of this very day, as of the date of recording this video, Happy Science and the Happiness Realization Party are both still active. But interestingly, they are no longer run by Ryu Okawa, simply because he had passed away. On March 2nd, 2023, the reincarnation of a spirit from Venus had passed away, and since then, the management of both Happy Science and the Happiness Realization Party has kind of been a mystery, because while they remain active, there doesn't appear to be any clear, or at least expressed, change of leadership. And we very well could be actively watching the downfall of this crazy religion that, in my opinion, got way more success and notoriety than it probably ever should have. From ancient deities to anime to millions of dollars to thousands of books to far-right extremism, Happy Science kind of has it all. And I truly hope that this small, oversimplified section has given you a small glimpse into the sheer depravity of, well, that religion turned political party. And with
Hey, y'all let me know if y'all want me to find those anime and react to that shit. I bet you that shit is hilarious.
that, let's move on. Grace Road. In the last section, we discussed what happens when you mix insane religious ideologies and extreme political policies. But in this section, we're going to discuss what happens when you mix insane religious ideologies, extreme political policies, and fresh produce. I'm not even joking. Grace Road was established in South Korea in 2002 by a woman named Ok Shin. Ok Shin formed the Grace Road Church because she believed that a doomsday event was on the immediate horizon, and it was her duty to do something about it and to begin informing people.
2015.
So she and her select chosen few could not only save themselves during this doomsday event, but also save as much of the world as they could. Or at least so they said. Like basically every cult that's ever existed, its origins and beliefs start with fear-mongering, world-ending, doomsday events that require immediate attention from basically anybody they can get their hands on. And while doomsday events can be scary and compelling, so far we've seen that, well, they've never really happened. That being said, that fact does not stop Grace Road from growing within South Korea. And from 2002 until 2014, Ok Jushin's teaching of a world-ending event and doomsday event coming soon was at least convincing enough for 400 people to join the cult.
400?
Now, as I stated, a big part of the belief of this, well, church was the fact that they were going to survive this doomsday event and any famine, and one of their plans of doing so was by creating one of the best farms the world has ever seen. And it's even stated on the Grace Road website that, quote, a missionary for the church was sent around the world to discover a land to survive the famine. And after scouring 60 countries, we settled on Fiji. And it's actually the move that Grace Road took from South Korea to Fiji that is truly a turning point in the story. Because in the early years of this cult in South Korea, they were essentially doing planning, gathering resources, ideas, spreading the message, and getting people. But once they found the right country and had enough people, the execution of this plan was truly evil. And interestingly, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, even though there is literally verifiable, provable video evidence of human rights violations taking place at the hands of the Grace Road cult, they are still operating in Fiji to this day and have some of the most successful businesses stimulating the economy of Fiji, which is why this story gets so insane and genuinely complex. The primary goal of Grace Road moving to Fiji was not to coexist and stimulate the economy. It was a meticulously planned hostile takeover that has been extremely effective. And this is a hostile takeover of both Fijian land, job, and natives, but also of the lives of the members of Grace Road, because it is alleged that as soon as all of the members moved from South Korea to Fiji, all of them had their passports seized to ensure they had nowhere to go. And once these members were essentially stuck on this island, things only got worse and worse. Interestingly, Grace Road didn't enter Fiji as a church. They entered as a business, and the first establishment was Grace Farm. And this farm was the first of many businesses to be established by Grace Road as part of this hostile takeover I mentioned previously. Shortly after the establishment of this farm in 2014, Grace Road established 7 different restaurants in the following year in 2015, ranging from grocery stores, noodle stores, pizza stores, dessert cafes, chicken grills, and beyond just growing produce and selling food to locals, they also established their own construction company on island. And Grace Road was quickly becoming vertically integrated on this island. And while on the outside this would seem like a great foreign investment stimulating the local economy, on the inside it was becoming very obvious that this hostile takeover was not only malicious but devious for both the members of the cult and the locals, who unfortunately didn't know it yet. Now, interestingly, during the same time that Grace Road was becoming established within Fiji, Fiji was more or less under a military dictatorship that was extremely oppressive, or at least that's how it's been described by the people who lived through it. And it was because of this extremely strict and violent government that freedom of speech was extremely suppressed, and any negative talk about Grace Road was quickly shut down, along with any negative talk about the current government in Fiji as well. Unsurprisingly, this oppressive cult and this oppressive government quickly got rather tight with each other, and formed essentially a synergistic relationship. The government of Fiji would invest money into the Grace Road businesses, Grace Road would build businesses that the government of Fiji wanted to see on island, the businesses were succeeding, and ultimately the government was able to see the businesses they couldn't make be formed. And the cult was essentially able to have immunity from the government because of the economic impact they were creating. Now, at this point, you're definitely asking yourself, okay, what were they doing? You've been hinting at it. What's going on behind doors? What exactly was this cult doing? And while the doomsday beliefs of this cult are nothing new, it's the actions that this cult was taking that make it so diabolical. As I mentioned earlier, almost as soon as they landed on island, they took the passports from everybody, essentially securing free labor for years to come. And that's because many members of Grace Road, and later on locals as well, were forced into labor at the consistent threat of physical punishment and torture. And it was quickly becoming obvious to the members who went to Fiji that the Grace Road cult was not necessarily about saving the world or themselves at all. Grace Road was more so about securing cheap labor and trafficking people from their home countries to Fiji to ensure that their greater plan of, well, overthrowing Fiji and making it their own home base possible. Interestingly, violence wasn't something that you were just threatened with in this cult. It was a core attribute. And this was proven in 2018 when footage emerged of members of this cult forcibly slapping each other in an attempt to, quote, beat the devil out of each other. And it was shown that in a documentary that aired in South Korea, many ex-members of this cult detailed disgusting allegations of physical abuse, being overworked, not being paid for work, being imprisoned, detained, beaten, and basically being sold the dream of salvation while living the reality of somebody in a Russian labor camp. Fortunately, the reign of terror created by Grace Road did not continue for very long, as the political climate in Fiji changed and stories got out about what was truly going on behind the scenes and the abuse that was taking place. And because of this, investigations were swiftly enacted in Fiji and in South Korea. Unsurprisingly, these investigations led to the arrest of Ok Shin and other high-ranking members of the cult. Although the cult is still active to this day and all of these businesses are still operating. Interestingly, in the businesses in Fiji, you can still get pamphlets that are written from Ok Shin from jail. And these pamphlets only further prove that this woman is willing to stop at nothing to complete her goal. At this point, you almost have to question, is this woman truly just trying to prepare herself and her followers to survive a doomsday event and live in bliss? Or is this woman just a massive grifter using religious fear and physical violence as a means to traffic and control people in an attempt to grow a massive corporate empire to gain leverage and eventual control of small countries and larger countries until she can, well, eventually run the world? But yeah, if you happen to be a tourist in Fiji, you might notice a lot of Grace Road restaurants and grocery stores and dentistry offices and hardware stores, and you might think that, wow, this is just a really cool local chain. But in reality, the entire lore of Grace Road and the cult behind it is just so hard to wrap your head around. And fortunately, right now, justice is starting to be served, although there are still many very real victims of this cult that took pride in the violence it instilled on its members and almost treated physical violence as a certain virtue. This has to be one of the most notable examples of a cult almost successfully taking over a country, and to this day, Grace Road-owned businesses are still highly crucial to the economy and, well, livelihood of people in Fiji, making the story that much more complex and truly unfortunate. And what else is unfortunate is the fact that there are so many cults that are still active to this very day. And it was for that reason that it was kind of tough to boil down so many options into one single video. But here's the deal. I love to make videos that you guys want to see. And so if you would like me to cover more cults that are still active today, all you need to do is let me know. Either leave a like or leave a comment below saying part 2, and I'll be sure to get working on that. And I guess if you're part of the 75% of watchers that are currently not subscribed, consider subscribing so you do not miss that part 2. And with that being said, let's get to the final cult on this list: Superior Universal Alignment. Up until this point, the depravity of the cults we've discussed has ranged pretty drastically. However, this last entry is definitely the most disturbing by far, and it's also the most obscure, with a lot of information being pretty tough to find, at least in English. From 1989 to 1993, a mysterious trend started popping up in rural Brazil of young boys going missing only to later be found dead and mutilated, specifically being castrated. And it was with these discoveries that authorities originally thought there was an organ trafficking ring taking place in this small town in Brazil. But what the authorities didn't know is that they weren't dealing with organ traffickers whatsoever. What they were dealing with was an insane cult. The Superior Universal Alignment was born in rural Brazil, allegedly by a woman named Valentina de Andrade, and she, like others on this list, claimed to have received messages from extraterrestrials. But the messages she received from these extraterrestrials were not about love or peace, they were about a doomsday event. But not only was she enlightened to a doomsday event, but she was also enlightened on how she could survive. Although disgustingly, this revelation and the doctrine that, well, spawned from it was truly evil. The doctrine that the Superior Universal Alignment followed was that boys born after 1981 were evil or tainted. And because of this, the...
Hey, wait a minute. I was born in 82, so you trying to say I'm wicked, bitch? Fuck you.
From the earth. And it was because of this that Valentina began using her cult members essentially as hitmen to begin murdering young boys. And because of this, as many as 19 boys were victimized, all between the ages of 8 to 13, all with the sole goal of essentially sacrificing these innocent children to an extraterrestrial god to ensure that Valentina and her followers would be seen as true believers and saved by these aliens when the end times would come.
How the fuck do you convince people to believe crap like this? I know there's some sick, dumb folks out there in this world, but ain't no way you can tell me she just convinced these people to go and kidnap little boys and unalive them. Like, they had already had that inside them. They just latched on to her as an excuse to go out and do some heinous shit. Cause ain't no damn way.
were allegedly very soon. Now, for a bit of context, it's important to mention that the reason that Valentina even had hitmen at the ready was because after this extraterrestrial premonition she had in her mind, she began preaching about the end times locally, and somehow she caught the attention of notable players within her community, specifically businessmen and doctors. And it was with the influence of these businessmen and the skill of these doctors that she was able to carry out some of the most evil acts in the name of, well, cult sacrifice. Personally, I don't understand how you can have a random woman tell you that, hey, yeah, the world's gonna end like in 10 years and we have to kill children in order to have aliens take us on their spaceship to save us. But literally, people fell for that and they began not only following her, but acting out this evil plan on her behalf. Interestingly, it's reported that Valentina claimed that the world was supposed to end in 1989, and when that didn't happen, some people left the cult feeling, well, duped, but others didn't leave the cult and actually became stronger members of the cult because Valentina told them that the reason that the world didn't end yet was because there wasn't enough sacrifices yet to satisfy the extraterrestrials. And while a majority of the cult left in 1989, those who stayed became extremely, well, extreme, which is when the murders truly began to ramp up. Because some of the members in this cult were surprisingly educated doctors, what they would do on this religious killing spree is literally take organs out of the victims they murdered and sell them on the black market in an attempt to continue funding the cult's mission of getting acceptance from aliens. And it was actually the surgical precision of these removed organs that led authorities to these doctors that were linked directly to the superior universal alignment. Although, unfortunately, even with 2 doctors being highly suspected of being involved in these murders, there was not enough evidence to convict them. And they and the rest of the cult were able to continue their reign of terror until 2 boys who were being abducted and actively castrated were able to escape and report to authorities everything that was happening, which led authorities directly to the cult, and the jig, for the most part, was up. And the result of the following investigation was several members of the cult being convicted and sentenced for their crimes. However, interestingly, Valentina, the woman who essentially put all of these people up to this, was reportedly acquitted of her crimes, partly because she was not present at the scene of the crimes when they happened. And with her being acquitted, it's believed by some that there are still remnants of the superior universal alignment being led in rural parts of Brazil by Valentina and potentially others. But unfortunately, I truly don't have any up-to-date information about the court cases or the current state of superior universal alignment. But if nothing else, this cult is just another disgusting example of how people are willing to do almost anything if presented with a charismatic leader and tempted with, well, universal salvation. And to me, it seems scary to believe that some people could truly be tricked to do such disgusting things simply by telling them that, hey, the world's gonna end in a few years, so it doesn't matter anyway. This is for the greater good. And it almost seems like, especially in these last 2 situations, that these cults weren't even religious at all. The religious clothes put on these cults was simply just a red dress to distract the cult members from what was truly going on. A sadistic plan to control or hurt people. And that kind of seems to be the underlying theme with all cults. Somebody has an evil, depraved idea. They use religious ideologies to control people and have them execute those ideas, or be the victim of those ideas. And well, at this point, I don't think I need to tell you that cults are, well, evil. But speaking of evil, if you guys enjoyed this video but kind of want a more upbeat palate cleanse, check out the video on screen right now. It's the video I made about dumb internet trends that people actually did. It's like
W video. Now, the first one that he covered about the snake handler, I don't think he was inherently evil. He was just very misguided and kind of stupid. And I heard people say that stupid people are the most evil because they can be convinced to do the most heinous shit. So maybe in that sense, he might be evil, but the rest of them cults after him though, yeah, they up there with the evil shit. But yeah, man, it's your boy TNT. If you like this video, like, comment. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. And make sure y'all go to Trust Me Bro and sign up. Make sure y'all go to Trust Me Bro and subscribe and let them know that TNT sent you. And it's your boy TNT with Trinitro Reacts, and I am out.